is that he's a suicide survivor. He attempted suicide when he was deployed in country and survived, and now is a huge veterans advocate and is known throughout the Northwest as a leader when it comes to suicide prevention. So when somebody like that comes to you and says, hey, you've got something good, build it for everybody, you have to listen. All right, hey guys, it's Sgt Q, and I'm back to remind you that Operation Pop Smoke is totally free while we're going through this pandemic. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, go to the App Store, download it for free, build your squad, go through the tutorial, and start supporting one another. And so I want to spend today just telling you guys a little bit about myself and how we got started building this suicide prevention app. So like I said, my name is Sgt Q. I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps with a great unit called 1st Anglico. It's the Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. So we're just a group of forward observers. We go out and we parachute in and call for fire, supporting arms, close air support, medevacs, things like that. We're really an asset to any unit that we get deployed with. So our job is really just to find the enemy and call in close air support to support the infantry or other units that are going to be moving into the AO. And for the last 5 or 6 years now, I've been running Q Missions. It is a award-winning nonprofit that helps veterans struggling with the effects of war or just struggling to overcome trauma they've experienced in their life. And so we've won multiple awards from the Departments of Veterans Affairs, and a few years ago, we were named Seattle's hometown hero for our flagship program called Operation Restore Hope. And if you want to learn more about that, go to our website, qmissions.org. There's a bunch of great videos on there. And if you're a veteran and want to go on mission, there's a way for you to do that as well. So during these last 5 or 6 years of working with veterans, we've had a lot of great success helping them with their mental health needs and being able to recover from trauma. But we struggled in an area that I think all nonprofits struggle in, or anybody who's trying to work with veterans. It's that moment from the time the veteran comes into your organization to the time they start to kind of turn the corner on their treatment. That time can take weeks or months or sometimes even years, depending on how much work they put into the program. So during that time, it's very difficult to stay connected with them. And we experienced that just like a lot of other nonprofits did. And we needed to find a way that we could connect with them or stay connected with them during this time while they're unpacking trauma, they're getting counseling, they're trying to, fix some of the relationships that they've damaged. All of that time is very tumultuous for a veteran. And so staying connected with them was really important. And birthed out of that problem came this solution, which is Operation Pop Smoke. It's the very first suicide prevention tool that operates like a first aid response. And when we looked at building this Operation Pop Smoke, that's what we looked at. We looked at the progression of first aid in America, and we asked ourselves this one question: why do these systems work? Systems like the Heimlich maneuver, first aid, CPR, and the AED. Why do these systems work? Why are they so effective at saving lives? And the answer was actually really simple, you guys. Those systems are effective at keeping people alive because they put the power to save a life in the hands of the average person, the person that's closest to the victim. And it allows them to keep that person alive long enough to get the professional medical treatment that they need. This app, Operation Pop Smoke, does the very same thing. It gives the person that's closest to the victim or closest to the veteran, the person struggling with mental health, it gives them a tool to keep that person alive long enough to get them to the professional medical treatment that they need. That's very simple. We just modeled it after what we already saw as successful. So now I want to show you guys a quick little video. It's a dramatization of how the app works. And if you want to see the full version, there will be links for you guys to be able to do that. So enjoy. Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen, a slow deterioration of our mental health to the point of incapacitation. And it's during that incapacitation that the app allows us to reach out for help to get the support that we need to keep going. And so how does that work? Well, as I've explained before, during a mental health crisis or during a complex PTSD issue, parts of our brain aren't operating. So the brain is very complex, but for a moment, we're just going to simplify it into two parts, the subconscious and the conscious. And during a mental health crisis, parts of the conscious mind are not working. The frontal cortex that's able to control our good decision-making, our long-term planning, and our ability to overcome suicidal ideations, our impulse control, that shuts down or its capacity is diminished. And so we're not able to reach out for help. And we know that suicide is an impulse. By talking to thousands of other suicide survivors, we were able to determine that suicide is an impulse. And with their frontal cortex not operating as it should, they don't have the processing capability to be able to overcome those impulses. And so when they commit suicide, they act on that impulse. And every one of these survivors that we talked to has said the same thing, that they regretted their attempt. And so with this app, they're able to push a single button and get the support that they need. So let's take a quick look at how the app operates in this next video. Over the next few minutes, I will show you a revolutionary new way to prevent veteran suicide using military battle tactics coupled with emerging technology. The first thing we have to do is we have to reintroduce the idea of the squad as a successful component to the veteran's life. Now, the Department of the Army, they did a 40-year-long study to determine why the U.S. military was so formidable on the battlefield, and they narrowed it down to one element, which is the squad. Now, when we tried to unpack the issue of mental health, we had to compare it to something that we already knew, something that we could see. So what if we compared post-traumatic stress to like a physical injury? What if we considered a mental wound the same way we considered a physical wound? Now, when we made this mental shift, it opened up a whole new door of treatment for PTSD. Now we take that one step further and we create a prevention method for deep depression and suicidal ideations based on long-standing first aid practices and life-saving measures. To do this, let's look at the progression of first aid in America. So we'll look at three things: the Heimlich maneuver, CPR, and the AED. 86% of choking victims fully recover when they receive the proper treatment, the Heimlich maneuver. CPR. The American Heart Association claims that over 92,000 people survive cardiac arrest every year because somebody properly administered CPR. And the AED system. According to Johns Hopkins University, they show that over 522 lives are saved annually by the AED system's proper application. So we asked ourselves, why do these systems work? Simple. It puts the power to save a life in the hands of the average person. Well, Operation Pop Smoke does the very same thing. This application puts the power to save a life in the hands of the average person. It puts the power to save a life in the hands of the people closest to the veteran. And it is this person that will keep them alive long enough to get the professional help they need. After researching the progression of emergency first aid response in America, we have determined that Pop Smoke is the best course of action for immediate suicide prevention. Just like the Heimlich maneuver, CPR, and the AED, this mental health first aid tool will become the standard practice for preventing premature death in America. But we can't do this alone. We need your help. We can revolutionize the way we think about mental health. Together, we can develop this life-saving tool to end veteran suicide. And together, we can innovate on the cutting edge of technology where new ideas become reality. And together, we can save lives through the relentless dedication to our heroes on the home front. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sgt Q, and I'm out. So as you can see, the app does three main things. Number one, it reintroduces the squad mentality, which we already know is a successful battle tactic that the military has been using for years. Two, it gives them a user-friendly platform to use when they're struggling with mental health, an easy way to reach out for help without jumping through a bunch of hoops. And the third and most important thing that it does is it gives them hope. And why is hope so important? Well, let me break it down to you. In the 1950s, Johns Hopkins University did a study. They wanted to determine which rats could swim better, the wild rat or the domesticated rat. And so what they did is they took these rats and they put them in glass jars. Now it's a little bit gruesome, and they couldn't get away with this today, but remember, this was the 1950s. So they introduced these rats into these jars of water and they let them swim around, and they would time how long it would take for them to drown. And when they did this experiment, they really didn't get any differing results between the wild rat and the domesticated rat. And each rat only lasted for about 2 minutes before it just gave up and dove down to the bottom and drowned itself. And the scientists were perplexed by this. Like, they knew that these rats could swim better than that. So why were they giving up so quickly? And so they took their experiment back to the drawing board and they tried to figure out what the problem was, why these rats were giving up. And they decided to change the parameters of the experiment. So they reintroduced new rats into these jars and they allowed them to swim around again until they began to drown. But the moment that the rats dove down into the bottom, they would rescue the rat out. They would hold him, they would pet him, they would let him recover. And after a few minutes, they would reintroduce the rats right back into their exact same environment. Now, something remarkable happened here. The rats that only survived for a couple minutes the first time would now swim for hours and sometimes even days before their body would physically succumb to exhaustion and they would die. Now, they were fascinated by these results. And at the end of the experiment, they concluded this. They said, in the absence of hopelessness, the rats did not die. You see, it was that small injection of hope into their lives, that hope of rescue, that had the rats swimming longer and harder than anyone ever thought possible. You see, it was that small injection of hope into their lives that kept them alive. And ladies and gentlemen, this app, Operation Pop Smoke, does the very same thing. Pushing that button injects that small measure of hope into their lives that are going to keep these guys fighting harder and longer to stay alive because they don't want to let their squad down. So when I first decided to design this app, I was just building it for my guys in my organization, just to help me better communicate with the guys that I was serving. But there was a news story that was done on our program by Mimi Jung on King 5 News, and a gentleman named Tony Dayton. He saw this news interview and he reached out to me and he said, hey, when can I get this app? I want to be able to use this for my guys. This is exactly what I've been looking for. And I had to explain to him, like, hey, I don't have the funding to build this out on a huge platform to serve a lot of people. Just trying to build it for my guys. Don't really have the funding for that. But thanks for the advice. Well, through weeks of conversations and convincing, he convinced me to actually look for the funding so I could build this out for a wider population. And so that's exactly what I did. So a little bit about Tony Dayton. He's a remarkable gentleman in his own right. He is a huge veterans advocate. He's an Army veteran. He's a great husband and father. And he's a very successful mortgage broker right here in the Puget Sound. But something unique about Tony is that he's a suicide survivor. He attempted suicide when he was deployed in country and survived. And now is a huge veterans advocate and is known throughout the Northwest as a leader when it comes to suicide prevention. So when somebody like that comes to you and says, hey, you've got something good, build it for everybody, you have to listen. And so here we are. Operation Pop Smoke is now a platform that is nationwide. Anybody can download this. Anybody can use it, build their squad, and start helping their friends and family, or get help themselves. Not only has Tony seen the value in this, but we have another healthcare group out of North Carolina who has wanted to partner with us so we can build this application for civilians. So we can change the terminology, change the look and feel to appeal to civilians. So whether you're a civilian or military, active duty, veteran, anybody can use this app in its current form, but just know that we are building it out for civilians as well. So that's the history of Operation Pop Smoke, how it works and why it works. we hope that you guys found value in learning the history of this app and want to be able to use it for your friends and family. Now, this is just our bare bones minimum of the app. There are other features and functionality that will be coming in the weeks and months ahead. So stay tuned for that. You'll be able to build multiple squads. There's going to be a mental health wellness check that's in there and a lot more resources that'll be added. So this is just your bare bones model that you guys are going to have access to, but use it. It'll be great. Your feedback is valuable. It helps us grow the app to be able to serve you guys better. So there it is, the history of the app. I'm Sgt Q, and I'm out.